Hey everyone, it's your favorite Yaleman farmer and bootleg. I'm sorry, I mean bootstrapper. Um, and today I wanted to talk about the uniquely American philosophy of transcendentalism and the American dream and sort of its associated myths. Um, and for those of you that don't know, transcendentalism is like sort of like the American version of European romanticism. Although they're not exactly the same. Romanticism didn't necessarily like have a problem with mass movements in the same way that transcendentalism did. Transcendentalism, as with a lot of things in Anglo American culture, the dominant WASP culture is extremely individualistic, to say the least. But yeah, it's basically just a philosophy that values, connection with nature, um an embrace of spirituality, um and non-conformity and individual authenticity. um and it was most powerfully, I think, articulated by this guy named Ralph Waldo Emerson, a Unitarian minister. And I read the essential works of Ralph Waldo Emerson in preparation for this video. I actually had it downloaded on my iPad from like 11 years ago. Um I mean, not the iPad itself, the file. And yeah, I think I downloaded it cuz there was a transcendentalism reference in South Park, although I think maybe Cartman was referencing uh Thoreau and not Emerson cuz he pulled out a copy of Walden. I still haven't read that, but maybe I will soon. Anyway, and yeah, what can I say? Reading it, I was just like shocked to find so many tenets of what we would normally call American culture. That's sort of like the individual can do anything and he's only accountable to himself and not others type of thinking. Um, which 15-year-old me may have agreed with, but 26-year-old me that has learned a lot more doesn't necessarily anymore. Uh, right? Especially in his early essays, he kind of basically says, like, what do I owe it to anyone? What if one person is wrong and I turn out to be right? And like, I just, as someone in their mid 20s now and not a like rebellious teenager, I understand where he's coming from, but at the same time, like, I don't know, I kind of feel like that's sort of what we might call today rugged individualism, in as much as it is responsible for the American dream. Work hard, get a good job, go out and you know seek new frontiers, and it is intimately connected with what in in history, in historiography especially, um is termed the frontier myth, this sort of myth that, Americans, by their individualistic, nonconformist spirit, were essentially destined by God to go out and colonize the rest of what we now call the United States of America. And it goes even deeper than that because it's part of a larger trend within historiography called great man history. And the phrase great man appears in so many of the lectures and essays, where, for a while Europeans thought that it was singular people like Napoleon or Washington. Although interestingly, because Ralph Waldo Emerson was an American abolitionist, he includes Toussaint Louverture, the guy who freed Haiti from, the servitude of the French, which is, I mean, I like that. That part was based. But, um, yeah, that these sorts of singular figures are the ones that drive history. I mean, we understand that not to be so true anymore. And that really history is a lot more complicated. There are a lot of like smaller players that have a role that typically don't get talked about, or like, you know someone's sheer force of will oftentimes isn't enough. And even kind of in our like sayings, right? We sort of acknowledge this. Behind every great man is, what do we say? A great woman. So yeah, so but either way, man, despite my not agreeing with it and leading to the sort of mythology of the Western United States and the American dream, um, I do actually, in some respects, respect it a lot. In the sense that, like, um, he's right that too much conformity, too much um acceptance of traditional ways can oftentimes lead you to do some very, very, very bad things. And he, as an abolitionist, of course, knew that very well. And, back then there was a lot of opposition to abolitionism in the United States. So, like, to not conform was actually a good thing, and there are many cases where not conforming is a good thing. But I do think that, you know maybe when it comes to the American dream, it was sort of contorted, because the American dream is ultimately a vision of American conformity, just like not so tied to things like the nation and, your ethnic group or whatever. Although, of course, we know that in reality it kind of was, because of the people, which those same people preaching individualism and nonconformity and freedom, keeping lots of other people that didn't look like them under the boots of oppression, which is ultimately the ironic thing. But, like, yeah, of course, guys, you should believe in yourself. You should hold yourselves to high standards and really be um willing to say like, hey, you know what, this in general is not okay. I mean, I know a lot of people fail to do that with a certain events going on in the Middle East right now. um and yeah, in that way, like I said, I can really respect it, but at the same time, like, I think our culture shows us that the way of, as I introduce myself, the yeoman farmer isn't always the best. Like, we need other people, we need help. We need help from mutual aid and cooperation, which is something that he he does mention it, but again, it's always goes back to the individual with him, which again, I like, the adult me definitely doesn't agree with. And the American dream itself has so many asterisks next to it, right? Systemic things that are very real, and it's unrealistic to think that just one single individual could take down an entire system, even if that's what the media and the culture at large will tell you. The American dream may have been alive for certain groups of people for sure, but not others. And you know, while it's admirable to believe in yourself and it, this led the United States on things like disability rights to be at the forefront. You also have to sustain those rights. And I think perhaps today more than ever we're seeing the crumbling of the myth of the great man finally within American culture, the myth of the American dream. And this sort of the classic western, as much as I love westerns, vision of society, of the great American man, and only the great American man, right? Although Ralph Waldo Emerson says that women can be that too, it's often, just within the normal accepted ways in which they were told to conform, ironically, for the nonconformists. Anyways, guys, yeah, those are my general thoughts on transcendentalism and the American dream through the works of Ralph Waldo Emerson. Thank you very much.